Welcome, everybody. What is up? It is December 12th, 12/12, one day from my mother's birthday. Shout out, moms. Jason, a perplexing week in the wrestling community in the Southeast, I think is the right terminology. How have you been, sir?
I've been okay. And it has been a wild week, and we're gonna get to all of
I was
that
going to say,
in a
yeah.
second. We're gonna dip our toe into the GHSA issue. We're gonna talk
Oh,
a
we're
little
not
bit
dipping a
about.
toe, lad.
Okay,
We're
we're
doing more
jumping
than dipping
full
a toe.
body here. We're jumping
I
full.
am. I
Right,
am. I don't know about you.
right.
I'm the
Uh,
old man that took my phone out of my pocket already when I saw the pool. The phone's out of my pocket. The pool
You're
is
like,
where
get
I'm
off my
going.
grass. Get off my
Yes,
grass.
legitimately.
We're going to talk a little bit about the North Carolina thing and that sort of thing. But before we do so, I want to go ahead and turn it back over to you. Talk a little bit about some fat and scrappy news, and then we'll jump into it. Is that cool?
Of course, gigantic, fat, and scrappy news. Shout out Coach Killian and the crew at Emmanuel. We finally hashed it out. There's still some details to iron out, but this year, April, ladies and gentlemen, the Don Father Memorial Duels, its second edition this year. The theme is Godfather, my dad's favorite movie series. We're going to be going with the Godfather theme. Big point for this year. Girls division. There was a lot of clamor for it last year. Had a lot of people asking about it. This year, boys division high school and girls division high school. More details to come, obviously, but I just wanted to get that off my chest because I am excited for it, man. It's I got some really cool ideas for it, and I hope to make it an awesome event once again.
All right, that's awesome, and I love the idea of the Dawn Father.
Mhm.
That's pretty cool. That's gonna be awesome.
Shout out to my mother. Again, she's the one that came up with the name. I'll give her credit on that one.
All right, so and happy birthday to her.
Mhm.
Um, all right, so let's without belaboring the point, I want to go ahead and for anyone who hasn't watched, and maybe, I mean, look, this is big news in the state of Georgia. It may not be big news. It may not have made its way to the surrounding states, but it will impact many of the surrounding states in the
Yep.
future. So we're going to talk a little bit about it. There are a series of rule changes that have occurred, and actually, the biggest one that we're going to talk about isn't a rule change. Let's talk about the first one that is a rule change, though, in the state of Georgia that I didn't even realize, and that is girls can't wrestle boys any longer.
Yeah, no, yeah, like that. I thought everybody knew that coming into the season, that was the shtick, that you cannot wrestle girls and boys cannot wrestle each other in varsity competition, which, funnily enough, I agree with it to an extent. I'm okay with it. I understand that. Like I can see the reason for the rule.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, I do understand it, and I just was surprised. I actually didn't. I don't know if I was just missing it or whatever, but it was something I
Yeah.
hadn't paid attention
I
to.
thought we had a whole conversation about it on a
You know what?
much
I'm
previous episode.
I'm old, so we could have had a previous.
And we've done like this is a lot of episodes of this.
Yeah.
We've had a good run,
All
so
right.
for sure it's mixed in somewhere, probably.
All right. But the issue is that and it really reared its ugly head this past weekend at McCallie in Tennessee, and that is eighth graders. We've always known that eighth graders in the state of Georgia cannot wrestle in a varsity competition in eighth grade for varsity or in Georgia.
Which,
And
yeah, makes sense.
in the borders of Georgia, if you come to Georgia, you're not supposed to bring an eighth grader to compete in those events because that's not allowed. But that rule is now being interpreted as that any Georgia wrestler who goes outside of the state of Georgia, most recently to McCallie, that they're not allowed to wrestle an eighth grader outside of the state of Georgia. And before we get to your interpretation or anything along those lines, the citation for the rule from what I got from an email, for anybody who's interested, is, let's see, 1.45. 8th grade students may participate on a sub-varsity team of high school, provided they attend a feeder school of that high school. Okay. And it goes into some detail. I'll post it here so everybody can see it. But I don't really read anywhere within here that it says anything about competing out of state. Then the other citation is in, let's see, page 28, section 2.62b. And it says, in situations not covered by section A, member schools shall compete, practice, or scrimmage only against other member schools or against schools that are full members of the state association in their respective states. Okay. It goes on to say, no, when member schools compete out of state, the host state's adaptations of the NFHSA playing rules will be enforced. And all GHSA bylaws regarding sportsmanship, eligibility, and game times will be enforced. So that's where they're citing this. And I don't know if it's in the correct interpretation or not. And it certainly has been interpreted the other way, where you go outside the state that you can compete against 8th graders. So first, let's just talk about it in a general sense, not the GHSA, but just in the general sense of competing against 8th graders from a Georgia high school athlete perspective. What do you think?
Man, okay, there's a lot to unpack with this.
There is.
And I'm going to save my more personal thoughts for the end. I'm going to be polite.
Good.
I don't know why I am, because they don't deserve me to be polite, but I will. This is my thing with it. If a man is, or if a, because I know what's going to happen. So if a boy's willing to toe the line and the coach is going to throw him out there, I don't see why it's an issue. That's my problem, is wrestling is not, for certain people, wrestling is not baseball. Okay? You got to be a certain kind of person to wrestle. If that certain type of person is willing to do it, and there's no legitimate argument as to the negative other than 8th grade, I have an issue. But again, I'm more worried about the tournaments it's going to affect and the possible careers it could affect. Because you know what I'm doing now, right? I swear to God, if I'm a coach of a high school in Bama, Tennessee, Florida, I'm bringing a host of 8th graders to any event I go to. No, I'm so serious. You think I'm kidding?
I don't have that many 8th graders, though. I mean, honestly, I don't have them.
No, I'm bringing 4 or 5 with me to a dual tournament that's in those states. So when George teams come down, I'm stealing 4 or 5 forfeits. Beat me then with 5 forfeits.
Yeah, but
I'm so serious.
Competition. You want the competition. It's not about winning. It's about getting your kids. Okay. All right, fine. My question is this. All right, you made it very specific to wrestling. Okay, I'm going to make it much broader. What about all of those 8th graders that ran, or all those high school 9th through 12th graders in the state of Georgia who went over to Huntsville and ran a cross country meet? And there were a bunch of 8th graders there. Okay.
Hey, you ain't wrong.
Right? I've actually gone through it. There are over 100 instances of athletes in the state of Georgia competing against an 8th grader in another sport this past fall.
That's nuts.
Look to previous years. Look to previous years. You could have wrestled an 8th grader at the Southern Slam or somewhere else.
Hey, we'll do you one better.
Right. So
like
I want to know, and I have rumors, but I want to know what precipitated this being interpreted, one, and would it be interpreted in this particular way?
There's only one scenario that comes to mind to me, and I'm just going to say this. I hope it was not a parent making a call because they're mad about a match. Because if so, you're setting a horrible example for your child. I hope that that's not the case. I'm being serious, like, and as serious as I could say it. If that's the case, what an example you set for your son or daughter. That's all I gotta say. And I want to leave that there before I say something I can't take back.
Yeah. All right. So the other thing that I don't understand is that we talked about McCauley, okay,
Yep.
this past weekend, and McCauley on paper should have been a fantastic tournament. It ended up being much less so because of a lot of forfeits that had to happen and everything else. Okay, from what I understand, is the GHSA contacted the head of officials up there, and that head official contacted the coaches, okay, that were going to McCauley.
Okay.
What about all the coaches who took their teams to Alabama or Florida or another state? Are you going to hold them to the same accountability, even though you didn't let them know?
Man, I'm gonna shut up because I got something to say, and I'm gonna leave it for the end. I'm gonna shut up. No,
All
but like, leave it. Beyond that, I'm moving on.
I mean,
I'm gonna
it's
say
a legitimate
something.
question by me, right? It is a
No,
legitimate question.
it is. It's more than a legitimate question. It's a really like it's a pertinent question because what's going to continue to bother me is when the GHSA decides to pick who they're going to paint with things and who they're not. That's going to continue to annoy me. And I'm le- I'm leaving it there. I'll say what I want to say at the end of the show. I'm going to leave that there because I got. See, you know what sucks, Jason? The fans love when I get angry at GHSA, and seemingly everything I post, when it comes to me yapping about the GHSA, I get a lot of views. So we're gonna get some views this week. I promise you that.
Right.
Best believe.
I will say this. I will say this. Like what you think of the GHSA or what you think about this issue or that like okay, I
All state organizations have problems,
they
and
do.
that needs to be stated. And I understand that, right?
Right.
However,
You live in the state of Georgia, so it's very
and boy,
personal.
I would give any amount of money. I wish the Floridians that last year at state were yelling at the head of FHSA wrestling, who was a good dude. I wish they had 1 month to live in Georgia and deal with the nonsense we deal with from our organization. I wish, like just once, I wish that they had to deal with it to know what we go through. And to prove my point of why Florida's run and organized leagues better than GHSA. It's not even close. Like they're two separate stratospheres.
I will say, as somebody who covers 6 states and now 7 with Mississippi, and although I don't know Mississippi's association nearly as well as I know the others, I will say you might think the grass is greener on the other side, but it ain't always the case. So, speaking of which,
do you know what I like about? Oh,
go ahead.
What I like about Mississippi is, for the most part, the MHS whatever they've allowed the MWF to do its business. They've allowed the wrestling people to make wrestling decisions.
All right. So and that's good. We'll see
It seems as if that's how it should work.
We'll
Just a
see
thought.
We'll see if it continues that way.
That's fair. That's fair.
I not that I'm a pessimist, but I'm so a pessimist.
No, but I mean,
speaking of which, and I don't want to get into the mud as it relates to the North Carolina issue earlier this week with weigh-ins for girls and some very harsh words back and forth between 2 teams and coaches, and
I want to see them duel now. I want to see them duel now.
But but I think for me, it illuminates a couple of things. One, I wonder how uncertain the rules are within the state of North Carolina on direction for coaches as it relates to the girls, because this is their first year, so they're trying to learn a few things.
Yeah.
You know, and number two, and this is the thing that actually stuck with me, is after that entire incident occurred, I got a lot of direct messages. I actually posted it on Facebook, but I didn't post it on Instagram. Somebody else screenshotted it. I shared it. And I had a lot of messages from a lot of girls. And I say a lot. It was probably more than 10, but not significantly more than 10.
Yeah.
Who felt like they weren't part of the team because the coaches maybe didn't necessarily believe in girls wrestling in the state of North Carolina. And that's a thing. Like,
it is.
That's
and it's
a
a
thing.
horrible
That's
thing.
not, and that's not only a thing in North Carolina. That's a thing in lots of places.
It is. No, I mean, South Carolina, when we were at the Southern Slam, I kind of made the comment to the East Side people about, so when Southern Slam get in a girls division, and they educated me about what goes on in South Carolina on the girls side of things, which I didn't even know. I mean, look, man, I feel like in the long run, the separation of boys high school wrestling and girls high school wrestling is a good thing. I feel like long term, letting the two atmospheres develop separately, which is why I'm a proponent of GHSA. I think the girls should have their own state tournament. I think
You have said that previously. I know that.
I think full separation, I think, is best long term. But anything that's best long term, there's going to be growing pains.
Yeah,
like that's going to happen.
The one challenge, though, is that a lot of schools don't necessarily have the resources to be able to get multiple coaches.
See, but I don't think you need multiple coaches.
But
that's my thing.
But there are lots of places, especially at small schools, where there's a single coach. They didn't even have a staff.
So I agree with that. My argument comes into shout out Weewa Hitchka. Was at the Gator Brawl last year. There's something to be said for that down there, and in certain areas of Georgia, we see it. If there's a kid from, let me pull a school. If there's a kid from Locust Grove that's wrestling a match and he doesn't have a coach, I have seen Ola people step in the corner until the Locust Grove coach gets there. I have seen Northside Columbus and Columbus have similar interactions. At Weewa Hitchka, that whole
Where's he going?
No bad. Sorry. As I was saying, at Weewa Hitchka, that whole region of the state, they all coach each other.
Yeah, no, I get that, but let's say you've got Ola and they've got a boys team and a girls team, and you have one coach. You can't send the Ola girls to another location.
You can't, and I understand that.
So that's gonna be really hard. I mean, I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying that in certain situations, the resources are going to be really stretched thin to be able to help two teams.
I understand that they're stretched thin. My argument would be this: Okay, so this is my thing. Why? When I mean separation, I don't necessarily mean they can't have joint tournaments together. Like the knockout, for instance. I love that it's boys and girls. We see events like that all the time. I think that's a good situation. And for separation of postseason, I mean, let's call it what it is. There's a week between area duels and state duels. There's a week between sectionals and state.
I don't know if there's a week between sectionals.
Oh, there was when was when I was wrestling. So what I'm saying is there is a way to do it. And I feel like that's the best for everybody long term. Because shoehorning the girls in with the guys only causes issues for both sides.
What about just moving the girls to a spring sport?
I'm not mad at that either. However, I feel like you would have some pushback there. But I feel like
you're getting a pushback all sorts of places. I mean,
yeah. Well,
what is the best thing for the sport?
I'm also one of the idiots that says dual wrestling should be in the fall and traditional should be in the spring, but I also am wrong on that too. So who knows?
I don't know if you're gonna I don't know if that's going to work because of like competition football, but it doesn't matter. All right, let's
Either
move
way,
on.
we'll flip it. Whatever.
Let's move on. All right. So even though the Macaulay tournament had some challenges and everything else, it still ended up being a really good tournament. Macaulay beat a team from Pennsylvania for first. Lots of really good matchups occurred. One matchup that didn't occur that I wanted to see happen was Tyler Secoy and Landon Jones in the finals at 190. Didn't happen.
Yeah, I would have been interested to see that.
So that's a little frustrating to not get to see that match happen. Other than that, some really good wrestlers, some really good matchups. Cleveland duels. Georgia schools went up to it. What'd you think?
I mean, Cleveland duels every year is a good event. And it's always good seeing a lot of Georgia teams up there. I hope nobody wrestled 8th graders, you naughty, naughty boys. Yeah, it was a good event, as per usual. As per usual.
Were you surprised that, I mean, out of all the Georgia teams that went, it ended up being Cleveland first, Summit second, I think Huntsville, Alabama third.
Yeah, I think.
So, certainly Cleveland looked like one of the top 5 teams in the Southeast.
Oh, I think they have an argument for it. I think Cleveland, this was kind of their coming out party. They had a couple guys in the lineup that they didn't have it earlier weeks. Like, this seemingly was the first time that they had their full lineup. I could be mistaken, and if I am, someone's going to yell at me in the comments, but I think that this was the first week that was the case, and they looked great as per. Look, whenever they have their full lineup, Cleveland is a tough out. No matter who it is, they're a tough out. So I'm not too surprised to see it, in all honesty. I mean, they looked really, really good.
Did you catch the score for the Friday night duel between Cleveland and Carrollton on the girls' side?
I know Cleveland won rather. Cleveland took care of business. I know that much.
Was that a surprise at all?
I want to say a surprise. I thought the duel would have been closer. So my matrix had Cleveland as 20-point favorites. I think they won by like 30 and change. So not too far off. I will say what did surprise me from the weekend, Georgia-wise, Social Circle knocking off Central Carroll. That was the big one for me.
I tell you what,
did not.
Social Circle was tough. They looked good.
They looked really good. They looked really, really better than I was expecting from them. I will say they when we get to the rankings part of the show, we'll get there when we get there. But
yeah, another
big changes.
Another team that looked really, really good, and this is again another Georgia team. So I don't want to get on the Georgia bandwagon, but I will tell you, going down to, and you don't know these stats. I'm gonna pull these stats up real quick.
Please do.
Where are they? There we go. All right, so going down to the Danny Byron this past weekend down in Osceola, Camden was there, South Dade was there, Southwest Miami was there, Fleming Island was there, Lake Gibson was there. Although keep in mind, Lake Gibson sent like 6 kids to the Ironman, so that's something.
Yeah, it wasn't the full Lake Gibson.
Correct, but Cleveland went. There we go. Or I'm sorry, not Cleveland. Camden went 73 wins, 37 losses, 66% on day 1, and 106 wins, 44 losses, or 71% wins on day 2. For the weekend, they had 179 wins.
That's nutty. Man, they're good. They're so good.
They are. And to put that in perspective, Camden obviously brought an A team and a B team. They just throw everybody in. They don't keep team scores. They let everybody kind of compete and those sorts of things. So I just added up all the wins and losses for their kids. And what that tells me is Camden's A's are good. But you know what? Their B's are really good too.
Which, man, that's the scary thing, bro, is that it's like the one thing you don't want to see out of Camden is when Camden's at their deepest. Like, that's where it's a lot of problems. That's where you're going to get issues. When they're at their deepest and everybody's banging, and it doesn't matter whether they throw their A's at you, and then in a duel scenario, that means they could bump and make moves. It's like, good God. Like, that's when it gets spooky, is when you got to deal with a Camden where you don't have to beat 14. You have to beat 19. You have to beat 20. You know what I mean? That's when they're scary.
Yeah,
when you got to beat more than just the starting lineup.
They can move different people into the lineup. That's tough.
And Camden, man, all roads look like it's going to lead to an absolute heavyweight clash between them and Buford. That's how it's looking. It continues, like, the more that it goes on, the more it's starting to look like it's going to be two heavyweights.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
So what, speaking of in the state of Georgia, what do you think of West Forsyth finished ahead of Mill Creek at the Fight Before Christmas event?
I will admit that was one of the tournaments that kind of slipped my radar this year, or not this year, but this week. I didn't really see all of the results out of it. But
well, I mean, Mill Creek,
it's a good result for West Forsyth for sure. I mean, it's a great result for him.
What you know about Mill Creek is this, right? You know that Bambinelli, Antonio Mills, and more recently Taquavius Mills and Blue Stifler are going to go get you points no matter what. But in a tournament that you could get a lot of points from lots of other individuals, how are the other teams can find a way to get above them, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, all right.
No, I agree.
What about Falcon Frenzy? Did you pay any attention? I know you mentioned it last week.
I paid a little bit because I knew of the tournaments. I paid a little bit of attention, not as much. I checked on it at one point. I didn't see everything to its completion. I'll say that.
Okay. All right. So let's talk lastly from last weekend about the Ironman. And that is, man, so Lake Highland Prep, I think, finished 9th overall. Baylor had a pretty good run, although I was surprised to see Max Norman and Hunter Sturgill not make the podium. That was a bit surprising for me. Michael Mako almost made the finals, which means he would have actually won the tournament because there was an injury default on the other side in the finals.
Yeah.
Did you watch any of the Ironman, specifically from the Southeast side?
Shout out to Mr. Maldonado. He was keeping me updated with his son and some of the other Gibson. Yeah, he was keeping me updated with some of the Gibson crew. So shout out to him. But I mean, Ironman, every year I make the case it's probably the best in-season event every year.
I agree.
It's a great tournament. So yeah, I mean, but again, it continues to be that, and this year was just another example of that. I mean, that 165 bracket might be the deepest single bracket I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, yeah, that was a good bracket. I think the 132 bracket was also super awesome.
Yeah, 132 was also really good.
How much of a shame is it that Georgia kids don't get an opportunity to compete? You see the Florida kids get an opportunity to head to Ironman. Georgia kids don't get that same chance.
No, because our state organization doesn't care about us.
All right. Well, then that's very simple. And let's move on to.
What? How deep do you want me to go on this?
No, I don't want you to go deep because I want to make sure we get to the rest of the rest of the.
I was like, we won't get to anything else today if you want me to go deep on it.
All right. So the ranking section, I'm getting ready to drop probably tonight, tomorrow, certainly in the next day or two, the Southeast rankings. And in the Southeast rankings, you're going to see because of what we talked about, Camden moving up to probably number 2. Summit moving up a few spots because they had a really pretty good showing. And then you're going to see some new faces kind of pop in. Down West Forsyth had a good weekend. Fleming Island had a good weekend. A few moving of spots, but I think what we're learning, Lucas, is that the more and more information we get, the more and more we get an opportunity to understand which were the teams that were coming in that were really strong and which of the teams are the teams that we thought were really strong.
Yeah, but we're getting a little bit of that. My rankings are starting to be a little bit more flushed out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't post a lot about Georgia rankings this year. There were some technical difficulties on my end, but things are starting to be ironed out. Next year, I think we'll have a bit more of an organized posting schedule for those. But
All
as
right.
a whole,
Hang on. Before you get to those, I want to just say one thing about I love this thing on the girl side. Freedom called me out on the girl side and said, we're not ranked. And yet we just beat everybody in the state of Florida. How awesome. I love getting those messages. Do you love getting those messages?
I do too. I think it's fun when I get them. I'm just happy that it wasn't me for once that got them. I'm happy you at least got one. God sakes. Finally. It's not all my fault, guys. You see, you finally believe me now.
Well, it's not even a fault. It's one of those things like, from week to week, especially on the girls' side, right? Week to week,
we
man.
talked about this.
Woo!
No, we talked about that. Who knows?
So I'll drop the Southeast rankings. I'll get to some Alabama rankings and some other rankings that we'll post in the thing. Georgia rankings. You're going to post the Georgia rankings here in the next day or two. What might you consider to be the biggest surprise or jump or change?
So I mean, you have some point changes. There's a new team in the pound for pound top 5.
Oh yeah, who is it?
Yep. Social Circle moves up into the top 5 pound for pound. They sit right behind Jefferson, and then South Effingham is 3rd, and then Buford and Camden still sits atop the list. However, there is something fascinating. For those who don't know, I've had this matrix for about 2 years now, and I can run a duel, and it'll give me favorites and whatnot. Every time I've put Camden in a dual meet, they have been a favorite, to this point by 7 points or more. For the first time ever, if I put them against Buford, my matrix says 29-29. They have it as a push.
Really?
So I am fascinated. And on the girls' side, the rankings are in complete shambles because of the way the Big Ten duels played out. I will say Greenbrier does jump to the top of the list. Greenbrier sits on top with a host of challengers behind them. Jordan, Carrollton, Gilmer, Lumpkin, Woodward, Gainesville, Columbus. Again, I'm going to continue to say it. The girls' classification is the most fun division in the state.
All right. On the guys' side, what is the most unpredictable or uncertain?
3A is a cluster. I have no clue what's going to happen in 3A. Columbus sits atop. Franklin is in 2nd. Then
Franklin's look good.
Then the swath: Gilmer, Ringel, Bremen, Kahula, Pickens, Lumpkin, White, Morgan. 3A is going to be a dogfight to the finish.
So jumping over to the state of Alabama, one team that I will say I've been super impressed with, and that is Mortimer Jordan out of Alabama. You and I saw them at the Southern Slam. They took 6th.
They look good.
McCallie, I think they took 5th or 6th. This is a team that, while we're still looking at Huntsville and Thompson as the top teams in 7A, Mortimer Jordan in 6A is a really pretty solid team from top to bottom.
You got to watch out for them. They're super tough and sneaky tough at that. Mortimer Jordan could for sure make a run.
Yeah. Let's see. A couple other things. I know we're not talking about other rankings this week, but I will say McCallie up in Tennessee, Baylor, Father Ryan, Christian Brothers, all solid. But, back when you were wrestling, McCallie was a force.
When I was wrestling, there were discussions that McCallie was the best team in the Southeast. When I was in high school, there were those discussions.
And they're not there
man.
yet. But
no, but I was gonna say that, man, you'd be surprised. They look incredible.
They do. All right. So, any other lasting thoughts on the rankings? We're gonna post those for people who are interested. What last things?
I do want to mention for my Mississippi Full, while no change at the top of the list, Van Cleve and Ocean Springs are still your top two. Lewisburg, North Pontotoc, St. Martin, Center Hill, St. Patrick's, Oxford, Picayune, but new to the top 10, Oak Grove High School. First year program, and they have looked super solid. They have a couple of good dual wins. They knocked off St. Andrews. I know that there were some more recent dual results from the past couple of days. To my Mississippi people, those are not involved yet. I will have those in on the next set. But yeah, lots of big stuff happening in Mississippi. I am fascinated to see the push for the state title to the end of the year. I think Van Cleve and Ocean Springs are hitting their strides both the right time. And I think it's going to be really interesting as we get closer to the end of the year.
Well, and I don't know that we talked about it last week, or maybe it was just this past weekend. I don't remember. But the St. Andrews Invitational had to really help you kind of understand a little bit better what was going
a lot
on.
of really good results from that helped me out.
Saints Invitational.
Yeah,
right?
Saints Invitational.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was for sure helpful. It gave me a good opportunity to see basically most of the really, really best teams in the state.
All right, so let's jump to this coming weekend where we've got a lot of different things going on. Let's begin on the girls' side. We got Queen of the South at Enterprise. We've got a Let Freedom Ring down at Freedom High School in Florida for the girls. I love the kind of bubbling up of really good, solid girls tournaments. I mean, we saw it earlier this year in Georgia, with the Big 10 duels.
I love it. I Queen of the South every year continues to grow and grow in the right way. There are a couple of teams I've heard rumblings about that might go late. I've heard, I don't want to say it for sure because it's coaches were asking me about it, so I'm going to leave that open. But there are some teams that have been interested in maybe making a late push to go. I'm excited to see that, and obviously Enterprise does this tournament right. Enterprise knows how to run a tournament, and they do it right.
All right, so across the Southeast, obviously there's still lots and lots of tournaments. Probably in the state of Georgia, at least on track from what we were able to see, Guerrilla Warfare has
20-something teams?
44 teams.
Well, I was wrong.
44 teams.
I was wrong.
That's pretty cool. And I think that'll be boys and girls division you're not going to see Buford there. You won't see Camden. Camden will be down, right? But you're still going to see lots of really good teams and some really good competition. And we're seeing that up in North Carolina with the WRAL tournament, which has 53 teams, all North Carolina teams. I guess the question is it at what level would you begin taking your program to that level of competition, that level of teams, number of teams?
As early as possible. Maybe not every weekend, right? But I think, you look at, I'm looking at Guerrilla Warfare's team list right now. Baylor in attendance. That is great to see. You got Commerce there. They're super tough at certain parts of their lineup. Mount Pisgah's there. That's good. Who else is in this one? Woodland. You have a lot of really solid teams there. Even if you are a younger lineup, even if you are on that kind of side, still developing your guys, I think you need to have one or two of these tournaments circled on your calendar every year at
Well,
least.
and a good thing about like guerrilla warfare and the WRAL tournament up in North Carolina is that even though you have some really solid teams, some really top teams, you also have a lot of variation. You have a lot of teams. So your best kids should be able to get their matches, right? And then your kids who are still developing and those sorts of things are probably facing teams that are still developing, kids that are still
Exactly. Yeah.
developing. So you have an opportunity for them to kind of go and get some good matches. Now, I, I understand, why, you go to, I'm trying to think of, there was a tournament down in Florida just recently, the Yellow Jacket duels at Jeff Davis. Like, I think they
Yep.
each got like 5 duels on day 1 and 4 duels on day 2.
Yeah.
So
Gator Brawl, the kids get 9 or 10 matches in the weekend.
right.
Shout out to the Gator Brawl.
So I think
Hoping to
that
be back there this
in
year
the
down in Wee Hitchcock.
developing of a schedule, right? You want to get those matches so your kid can get mat time. All your kids can get mat time. But you also want a tough tournament so your best kids can understand what sectionals and state are like.
I almost feel like the way you got to craft your schedules with the idea of before Christmas, getting your, a tough dual tournament and a tough individual tournament out of the way so that the last couple weeks of the regular season, you can do your best to get your guys kind of in the right frame of mind. Almost like, I want to say, kind of make them, but confidence gainers, because that was the way that, Etheridge would do it, is after the knockout, we would kind of, it would kind of be more about getting our confidence there and getting our mind right heading into the postseason.
Yeah. Well, and because the eye is on the prize by that point in time.
Yeah, exactly. Once you hit, middle of January, it's, hey, we got area duels in the windshield.
So probably the best tournament in the Southeast is Bradley Invitational. Did you ever wrestle at the Bradley Invitational?
No,
No.
no. So the schedule was a little different. I went to Stampede my first 2 years, and then we went to Falcon Frenzy, and then I forget my senior year where we went.
So Bradley Invitational is typically Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee schools. One of the things that's really interesting is that Cleveland typically goes to Beast of the East. I think they go to the Beast of the East, but they're not on the team list for Beast of the East, and they are on the team list for Bradley Invitational. So, and I think they try to avoid Bradley because that's a big rivalry within Tennessee. So it'll be interesting if Cleveland's there. You've got, I think Huntsville might be there. You might have some really, really solid teams at this weekend's Bradley Central Invitation. So
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
All right, so let's talk before we get into our parting shots. Let's talk about probably the 2 biggest tournaments on the slate this weekend. They're both out of state. You got Beast of the East up in Delaware, Casey Stampede out in Kansas City, obviously. And I'm just going to read to you. So Beast of the East, Dobbins Bennett, Tennessee, East Side, Green Hill, Jake Stacy basically is going. Lake Highland Prep. You've got Signal Mountain with the Urachucks, Somerset, Summit. And then you've got 2 North Carolina schools in Topsail and Union Pines, both going to both going
Awesome.
up to the east. And then out in Stampede, you have Baylor's A squad going to head out there, Buford, Christian Brothers, Hewitt Trussell, Thompson, Woodward Academy, and Jefferson. So I guess the question, and this doesn't always happen, I guess the question is, you have the resources, you have the ability. Are you taking your tough squad to the Beasts or to the KC Stampede?
I will say I'm biased. I love the Stampede. I got to wrestle Dayton Fix at the Stampede. My 2 years there, I got some really, really good matches. But I mean, Beast of the East, you're getting national prep teams.
Yeah.
So it'd be tough for me to pass that up. However, Stampede is a fun trip. Kansas City, Missouri is a great city to be in. The hotel that we always stayed at was pretty nice. The restaurants were good. So if I'm looking at a experience for my kids, I might go to Stampede. But if I'm just looking for the toughest event I could get, I'm probably taking my squad to the Beast.
Right. So actually, I'm glad you led into that because in my mind, in the way we're ranking it, Iron Man is 1. Beast has got to be 2, 3, or 4. KC Stampede is down around 5 and 6 as far as national level tournaments, right? You're saying Beast is just slightly above Stampede in terms of level of competition.
I think if I had to rank them, I think Beast would probably end up third for me, and Stampede would probably be fifth or sixth.
Okay. What's 2?
Doc B. Doc B's
B.
tough. I love Doc B.
I think Doc B is 2 as well. Number 2 as well.
And Powerade would be in the mix as well.
So let's talk about the knockout, part of our parting shots. The knockout coming up. You and I actually haven't discussed kind of our schedule for releasing information, but I have all the registrations for the girls. I will say at the moment, there are 9 states represented for the girls on the girls' side. It's going to be some fantastic brackets. The boys' side, we've already done the team reveal a couple weeks ago. You and I are going to do a preview of both the girls and the boys. I've got some ideas of doing some short release videos that, like we did last year, where you were upset about not making the what was it, the best wrestler not to win a knockout title? Is that what that was?
Yeah.
All right. So I have some ideas. We'll talk about those off camera, and everybody should look for those in the future. But the knockout's going to be a ton of fun. That's a little over a week away. So yeah, that's coming up. All right. Do you have anything to say before we move on to the final parting shots?
Not really, man. I love the knockout. It's a great event. For those who don't know, just due to some family stuff, I won't be able to be in attendance. That's a shame. I love doing commentary for it. I'll be obviously paying attention and whatnot, but yeah, it'll be fun.
As much attention that Lucas can pay when he's not actually with you.
Which isn't much, but I'll do my best.
For those of you that are going to the knockout, I will be there. Come up and say, hey. I will give you Lucas's direct line so you can contact him and let him know everything that he said wrong. So,
of course.
But we are going to do a preview, whether you're coming with me or not.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, we're for sure doing a preview. That's not
and just so everybody knows, we're going to drop that preview probably before next Tuesday, which is our normal drop day, because the tournament starts pretty much right after that. So, all right. Yeah. Parting shots. Let's I know where this is going to go. Let's try to keep it I don't know what to say. Go ahead.
The GHSA does not care about the athletes in the state.
Okay.
If you have a child,
is that
no, I know. I think it is. Okay. I think it is.
All right. Go ahead.
You don't this is my thing. Forcing kids to forfeit varsity level tournaments that the coaches and parents of those 8th graders put them into. They registered that child for that event. Doing that, you are possibly taking away wins and tournament results that could further someone's academic and athletic career. That's my issue. And I don't think the bubbleheads ahead the GHSA don't really contemplate that. For whatever reason, they have a stick up there, about wrestling 8th graders and competing against 8th graders. Then you know what? Those 100 or so cases you talked about, they better be handled accordingly, or it's a problem. And I'm going to leave it with this, because I'm going to say something I can't take back that'll get me kicked out of Macon if I don't. So I'm going to say this. If you have an athlete in the state of Georgia and you're not in high school yet, move.
Oh,
move.
Wow, that's a You are so hyperbolic.
I'm not. I'm really not, though.
What? Okay.
Or go to a Jesus school. Go to a Jesus school where you could compete against people, and there is no concern for who you have to wrestle against and can't wrestle against. Hell, you get to go wrestle the Iron Man then and actually see if actually put yourself up against the best guys in the country, so a college coach could see you. Let's what it is. There are guys every year that go NAIA, D2, D3, me included, and I'm a D2 guy and I love it. I'm not arguing. There are guys that go to smaller schools and don't get the money that they could get because they can't go to the right events. And that's the truth. That's the plain truth of the matter.
Yeah. Well, I will say the Independent School
It's
Association
despicable.
with
It's despicable.
Jesus.
The lack of concern for what the athletes want.
I will say, we might see that given all the other things that are happening this off season. We might see some schools move over there.
I'm hoping. I hope all of them do. Or I hope that somebody gets their head out of whatever hole it's in and we can actually get decisions that are good for the athletes. I'm tired of things that are good for the bottom line. I'm tired of that.
It sure feels like that decisions they don't seem to be made with the best interests of the athletes.
Well, I'm going to say this because I know what's going to happen.
This is not a shot correct.
This is not a shot at volunteers because somehow everything I say about the GHSA turns into me taking a shot. The little sister of somebody who's running a table at the state tournament. So I guess I shoot at everybody. This is not a shot at volunteers. This is not a shot at the people that want to put their time in. This is a shot at the people at the higher ups that make the decisions, the ones that are paid by constituents. Because mind you, the GHSA is an arm of the state government. It is not some publicly funded thing. It is an arm of our state legislature.
No, actually, I don't know that it is. It's a
the
nonprofit.
GHSA. Yes, the GHSA is governed in totality by the state government. That is where the GHSA get. Yeah, the only way you scare the GHSA is by the state government because of the fact that they're not an arm of it. Let me rephrase. It's
right,
not
they're
like,
not an arm of it. Now, you might be right in terms of the only
stick you have. Rephrase. However, point still is, they are there, or if not for nepotism and who's golf buddies with who, mind you, they are put there to make decisions that are best for the high school association. That is including the athletes of the schools and the students that go there. And I'm sorry, the GHSA has made very few, if any, decisions that have the athletes' best interests in mind. That's how I feel, and I'm the one that's got the big enough mouth to say it because I'm the dumb guinea of the group that's willing to say it. In closing, I'm tired of decisions that are made for the bottom line. That's what bothers me.
I get that. It certainly appears that way. I understand. All right. So on that note, everyone, I hope you have I hope you have a wonderful week. Watch Stampede, watch the Beast of the East. Look for another show in the future. And just so everybody knows, Lucas and I are still trying to gather some information and some interviews and some different things for different people to make sure that we share, not both sides of the story, but we share all the information that we're able to get. But just because we ask for the information doesn't mean that it's given to us. So I just want everybody to understand that I'm not just shooting off. We're not just shooting off our hip. I do want to understand if I can get Mr. Don Core on an interview and do a Zoom interview with him and ask him certain questions, I will do so and I will share with everyone.
I'd love to. I would love that.
Right. So maybe that'll happen in the future. Same thing for those of you outside the state of Georgia. If there's a frustration, so I sent an email earlier this week to the North Carolina High School Activities Association about the girls issue and direction as far as that goes. So we are here, we're advocates. We want the sport to do well. So we're asking those questions. That's the reason we're here.
And a lot of people say things about me because of the fact that I shoot at Don. Let me make something clear. Donkor's a good dude. I
He
genuinely
is a good
believe
dude.
that. I've
He is a
spoken
good
to
dude.
the man. By no means am I saying that he is a bad person. I'm not making the case anyone is a bad person. My issue is they are making decisions with the wrong purpose for those decisions in mind for what their job description is. That is my sole problem. Wrestling saved my life in multiple ways. I will give my life to push it in the direction it should go for the athletes, for the coaches, for the parents, for everybody that's involved with it. That's what this is, for God's sakes. It has nothing to do with whether I like someone or not. Hell, some of the people I do work with I don't like.
Like
Jason, I
me.
love you. I love you. That's not. I love you, Jason. You know that. Warp. That wasn't my point. Just please know, I'm not attacking anyone's character. Even though I know I'm going to see a Facebook post, probably on one of the Team Georgia forums, that I'm shooting at people's character again. That's probably what's going to happen here. And
Yeah.
then somehow one of my best friends is going to throw me under the bus again, because that's just the way this works.
Well, there you go. All right, guys. You have a wonderful week. We will talk to you next week. Look for the knockout preview and a recap of all the week's action. And please, let's have a quiet week where we're not discussing some rule or some.
That's not going to happen.
Please.
That's not going to happen. That's not.
Peace.